3 more basic techniques, and then later in the video we'll get into 3 advanced techniques. So the first basic technique we have is AD strafing. Now AD strafing is just moving from left to right, and one thing you guys really have to remember is when you get into gunfights is that movement is just as important as hitting your shots. So don't just focus on hitting your shots and end up standing still because the enemy will most likely laser you. You have to focus just as much on how your movement is as you are focusing on hitting your shots. So make sure you are doing both of those equally, and you will have a lot easier time killing your opponents. So another thing to think about when you're using this technique is changing it up a little bit when you're going left to right. So instead of just going the same distance from side to side, try to change it up and maybe cut the right side a little bit short and then do the longer on the left side, just so the enemy doesn't know, when you're going to change directions and you're more unpredictable and it's harder for them to hit your shots on you. Now this next technique works really good against good players, and the reason for that is because high level players tend to aim for the head of the character. So this next technique is called crouch spamming. Crouch spamming is another technique that's used in a lot of FPS games, and the cool thing about crouch spamming is it can actually be combined with your AD strafe. So crouch spamming is as simple as it sounds. You're basically just spamming your crouch button, and just like the AD strafe, you can get very unpredictable with this. You don't have to just spam it. You can kind of spam it and then maybe stop crouching for a second and then spam it again, just so your enemy doesn't know what your next move is and it's harder for them to hit you. And like I said, if the enemy's aiming at your head and you crouch, the bullet will go over your head and it'll cause them to miss. So crouch spamming and AD strafing at the same time makes it really hard for your characters, for your enemies to hit you. But also keep in mind that it's going to affect your own aim slightly. So you have to kind of have a trade-off between how good your aim is going to be and how good your movement is going to be, because obviously the crazier your own movement is, the harder it's going to be to hit the enemy's movement as well. So for the last basic technique I'm going to be showing you guys is called slide jumping. Now slide jumping is the best way to close gaps in Apex. It's also the best way to move your character at very fast and unpredictable speeds. The best way to use slide jumping is if you're trying to close the gap on an enemy. Say you have a peacekeeper and the enemy has a longbow and you're trying to close that gap towards that enemy so that you can get into their face and put them at a disadvantage. That is one way to use the slide jump. Also another way to do it is to stand around a corner, and if the enemy knows where you are and you know where the enemy is, if you know that enemy is ADSing at that corner, so which is aiming down sights at the corner that you're at, instead of just normally peeking the corner and shooting at him, which would be very predictable, you can slide jump from out of the corner and you'll start flying out the side of the corner you were just at, and it'll make it a lot harder for your enemy to adjust their crosshair onto you, and you'll most likely get the first couple shots onto your enemy before they get the first couple shots onto you, and that alone could win you the gunfight. Also, one more big tip about slide jumping is that make sure you're doing it not just in fights, but just whenever you're rotating or just running around the map. Slide jumping is 15 to 20% faster than if you're just running around the map, and you can perform a slide jump every 2.5 seconds. So after you do a slide jump, your velocity will reset and you'll have to run a little bit, and then after 2.5 seconds you can do a slide jump again, and if you do this correctly, you'll be running around the map 15 to 20% faster than you normally would just sprinting. Alright, now moving on to the more advanced techniques, we have jiggle peeking, or what I like to call reload baiting. And what I do with this technique, and that you'll actually see on the screen here, is I'll jiggle a corner, which jiggling corner is just kind of peeking out and shooting a couple bullets, then peeking back in as soon as my enemy's about to shoot back, and just cause them to do that over and over again. A lot of times your enemies will even overshoot at the corner, just expecting you to pop out again, but you don't. And the trick to this is just to wait for your enemy to have to reload. As soon as your enemy stops shooting and you hear that reload cue, that's when you want to completely peek the corner and spray them down. So this technique works really well against people in 1v1 situations when the other person doesn't have cover and they're forced to try to kill you and you do have cover. Use the cover to your advantage and just kind of jiggle peek it until the enemy has to reload, and then once they reload, jump out and finish them off. Keep in mind this reload bait / jiggle peek technique also works really well with guns like the Wingman because of its low rate of fire but high damage per shot. You can peek out for a split second, shoot a 45 damage shot, and then go right back in before the enemy can even shoot you, and you can do that over and over again. So use guns that will complement this technique if you are going to use it, although any gun can work if you're just going for a reload bait. If you're going for a reload bait, you can even use fully auto weapons, just kind of shoot 2 to 3 bullets and then peek right back in. So just keep in mind that the Wingman is going to be the best gun for this technique, along with shotguns like the Peacekeeper, other guns with low rate of fire but high damage per shot. Now for this next technique, I'm sure you guys have been in a situation where you're in a fight with someone and you end up having to reload and the enemy is about to beam you down while you're reloading. B-hopping. The best thing to do in a situation like this, if there's no cover to go to, is to turn to the right or to the left of the enemy. So if you're facing the enemy, do a 90-degree turn to either side, and then what you want to do is sprint forward and then stop, walk backwards, sprint forward again, stop, walk backwards, and be unpredictable with that movement. Now what this does is it puts your character in a sprinting animation, and when you go into a sprinting animation, as a lot of characters, they dip their heads down, and it will make you very, very hard to hit, and most likely you'll be able to get the reload off before the enemy can actually kill you. So use this technique in situations where you have to reload in order to kill the enemy. And honestly, the best character to do this with is Wraith, because if you guys haven't seen yet, when Wraith runs, she completely bows down. She's almost at like a 90-degree Naruto run when she's running. So if you do this with Wraith, she literally bows down by like 90 degrees, and it'll be really hard for the enemy to hit you because her movement would just be absolutely crazy, combined with the Wraith's small hitbox as it is. Now for this last movement technique, we're actually going to be talking about B-hopping. Yes, I know B-hopping was removed from the healing aspect of it, but you can still B-hop without healing, and it's very, very useful. So when you're in your B-hop animation, you have a very, very weird player model when you're doing it. In fact, B-hopping away from a fight, if you get good enough at it and you're able to go around corners and make sharp turns with B-hopping without losing your momentum, is much better than sprinting away from a fight, because your player model is jumping up and down, and it's in this weird kind of crouch form that's really, really hard to hit. Being B-hopping away from an enemy is a lot safer than sprinting away from an enemy. So if you learn how to B-hop, it can still help you in your games. It's not just used for healing, it can also be used for getting away from a fight and dodging enemy bullets. Also, if you guys don't know how to B-hop yet, I already made a tutorial on it. It is still very useful in Apex Legends. You can also still do kind of a slow B-hop heal, which is faster than just normal healing. So if you guys haven't learned how to B-hop yet, I'll leave a link to that in the description of my video, and I'll also leave it right here as a card. A couple things to keep in mind before this video wraps up is, one, make sure the legend choice that you are picking has a small hitbox. Don't get me wrong, characters like Gibraltar and Caustic are still very, very viable. In fact, they're very strong in even ranked mode, especially Caustic in the camping meta. But just know that they have different playstyles, and they aren't supposed to be dodging bullets like these smaller hitbox characters. So if you do want to play an aggressive playstyle and be dodging bullets and using these techniques, you're going to have to be using a smaller hitbox character, because using a big character like Gibraltar, it's going to be a lot harder to use a lot of these techniques that I told you today. Other than that, guys, just understand that the more unpredictable you make your movement, the harder it is for you to be hit, but also the harder it is for you to aim at the enemy. So you have to find that balance between the two. Alright guys, well that was the video. Thank you so much for watching. If this helped you, make sure to leave a like on the video. It means a lot to me and it helps my video get seen. Also, subscribe to the channel for uploads like this, and let me know if there's any guides or anything you want me to make a video on in the comments below, and I'll be happy to do it in the future. But other than that, guys, this has been Quake V, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.